Hello everyone. Today I'm going to give a short tutorial about some resources that are online that are really good for doing primary source research. This is focused on some early American resources, and some of these are free resources that are available to anyone, and some of them are only available through HOLLIS. So today I'm going to show you how to use four things. First, I'm going to start with HOLLIS for archival discovery, and then I'm going to show you three databases or resources that you can use to do some of this research online. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen so that you can see HOLLIS for archival discovery. Let's do that. Okay. So you should be seeing a website called HOLLIS for Archival Discovery, which you can get to through the main HOLLIS website, or you can just Google HOLLIS for Archival Discovery and it'll pop right up. And what this is, it's HOLLIS for searching Harvard's collections that are manuscripts and in special collections like the Harvard University Archives and Houghton Library and the Schlesinger Library, many different libraries at Harvard. But today we're going to look at some things that are in the Harvard archives. So the way that this works is you put in your search term here. And so I'm going to say that we're going to look for Memorial Hall and search for that. And it'll come up with a bunch of options. You can also limit it to what library things are in, like the Harvard University Archives. But I'm looking for photographic views of Memorial Hall. So when you open a collection, it'll look like this. There will be some information that you can see about the collection. Here, you can open these up to see more about the collection, more background information. And over on this side, there will be folders, different folders that are in the collection. And these are full of the specific parts of the collection. So this collection is great because a lot of the stuff is digitized and it's online. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look over here at the folders, and I'm going to open up folder 18. Now, when there's a folder that has digital content, the digital content will show up as this little box here that you can open in a new window. So I'm going to open that up and it'll load. And this is the contents of that folder. And so what we're seeing here are photographs of Memorial Hall and of Annenberg in the 1870s, 1880s. These are digitized front and back, so the front of the picture here and the back here, so we can tell that this is from 1887. And you can click through these, you can just browse them. I'm really interested in this folder in the photos of the waiters who worked at Memorial Hall. So in the 1870s and 1880s, Harvard had an all-Black staff working in the dining halls as waiters. And we have a couple of photos of those staff members here. You can zoom in, you can move around and look at the photo closely. If you really zoom in on this picture, you can see this one person here who's wearing his GAR medal. So he's a Union veteran of the Civil War who worked at Harvard after the Civil War. And if we look at the back of the photo, it should have a date on it, so it says 1885. So that's how a photo collection works in HOLLIS for archival discovery, that you can look at the digitized things from that collection. You can also just click on the digital material here and it'll take you to a list of all the different folders that have digital material, and you can go through those on your own. So that's one way to use HOLLIS for archival discovery. While we're here though, I do want to show you another really useful thing that's you can find through HOLLIS for archival discovery, which is the Tolman Index. So the Tolman Index is a card catalog. It's an actual physical card catalog in the Harvard University Archives reading room. And what it does is it indexes all of the early university records. So student records, faculty records. If you look up somebody's name, it'll tell you where that person shows up in early university records. And it's pretty much through about the Civil War. So 17th century, 18th century, and the first sort of half of the 19th century. So let's click on the Tolman Index. And the Tolman Index has a lot of digital material. It's got this alphabetical listing here, which is really useful. Now, the Tolman Index has cards for people, but it also has cards for subjects or themes. So you can look up, you know, commons or committees. I'm going to look up a person. I'm going to look up John Hancock. So we're going to look alphabetically here. So John Hancock should be in here. And I'm going to go and do this again because there's a digital version of this card catalog. So I'm going to switch over to the digital version to look for John Hancock. All right, so we're in a card catalog. These are digitized cards from the big cabinet that's in the reading room. And over here are the sequences that you can click through. And it's all in alphabetical order. So we're going to look for John Hancock. He's right here. John Hancock. And John Hancock actually it has many cards. Some people only have one card or two cards. John Hancock was not only a student at Harvard, but he was later the treasurer of Harvard. So he's in a lot of the university records. So he has quite a few of these are John Hancock. But I'm going to go to this one. So this, for example, is John Hancock, class of 1754, so the famous John Hancock. And this is a list of all the rooms that he lived in while he was a student here at Harvard. So he boarded in Mass Hall, room 24, and it says who his roommate is, the different rooms he lived in and who he lived with. I'm interested, though, in his disciplinary record. Okay, so one of the things that the Tolman Index gives us is if someone was punished at Harvard, if they were fined, or if they had to give an apology during morning prayers, it tells us about that. So it's a disciplinary record of 18th century students. And so if we look at John Hancock and his disciplinary record, it says faculty records 1, Hebrew grammar delivered. So he borrowed a Hebrew grammar. That's on page 326. Then there's this note, making Mr. Sprague's servant drunk, degraded, page 343. I'm not really sure what that means. So I'm interested in finding out what happened with John Hancock, why he got punished. So what I'm going to do is actually hop over to another database that Harvard has, and that's called Colonial North America at Harvard. Now, this is free and open to the public. You don't need a Harvard ID to access Colonial North America at Harvard. This is a database of over 650,000 digitized pages from all over Harvard, 17th and 18th century manuscripts from many different libraries at Harvard. And what I want to know is what happened with John Hancock. And so I'm going to look for the official faculty minutes, because it said on his card that this is going to be in the faculty records. So I'm going to look for the faculty records here. Okay. Now I know John Hancock graduated in 1752. I mean, in 1754, sorry. So it could be in this official minutes, or it could be in this official minutes because he was a student both of those times. But it said that it was on page 343. So that leads me to think that it's probably toward the end of the book. So I'm going to look at, let's see, I'm going to look at this one and see if that's the right one. So when you click on something in Colonial North America at Harvard, you'll get this little box, and you can manipulate things within that little box, or you can go full screen. Okay. So this is the same tool that we saw with the photographs of Memorial Hall. You again have the sequences here. Now it said page 343, but the pages and the sequences don't always line up exactly because there are also photos of the cover of a book, the first couple, you know, the end papers. So they don't always match up exactly. But let's see what's on page 3, on sequence 343. Okay, so sequence 343 is going to give us page 331. So we need to go a little bit farther here. All right, so we'll click on 355. Okay, there's page 343, great. And when I look at page 343, I see that, oh, Hancock, that's good, that's showing up. But I also see that that is starting in the middle of a sentence. So I'm just going to roll this back a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to just click here to get rid of that. Let's see what this is. Okay, so there's a meeting of the president and tutors on September 3rd, 1751. Okay, it says who's present at the meeting, the president, Mr. Flint, who's the tutor, various other people are present at this meeting. And let's see, what does it say? It says, agreed that Foxcroft and Marshall, seniors, for being most remarkably active in making drunk a Negro man servant belonging Mr. Sprague, and that to such a degree as greatly endangered his life, be degraded, each of them, 7 places in his class. Okay, so what's happened here is that several students from Harvard have gone to Sprague's Tavern in Cambridge, and they got an enslaved man very drunk to the point that his life was in danger, and the students are being punished by the university for taking part in this. And one of the students who's being punished is John Hancock, and he's listed here on page 343. So that's one way that you can use colonial North America, is looking at these Harvard records. But colonial North America is not just for Harvard records. There are lots of other things in colonial North America, hundreds of thousands of pages. So you can look for, if you're researching Mexico, right? You can type in Mexico, see what, there's this whole collection of Mexican legal documents in colonial North America that you could look at. So you can click when it has one of these images with the plus in it, that means that this is a collection, and you can click through it and there are various items in the collection. For example, this is a legal document from Mexico in the mid 17th century. And the same thing, you can click on full screen and read through this, zoom in as you need to. There are lots of really neat things in colonial North America. I'll show you one. So let's look at the Charter of 1650. So let's look for Harvard's charter. There it is, the Charter of 1650. So this is Harvard's charter. And let's full screen it. So this outlines the various, the president's office, the faculty, how Harvard is going to be set up. This is the official document. There's a place for the governor's seal. You can read it at your leisure. You can see the Harvard 3 books here. And if you go over here and you scroll and you zoom in here, you can see there's a little scene in the charter. There's this guy with his dog and his bow and arrow, and he's shooting at this little squirrel that's hidden here in the scroll of this calligraphy. So there's lots of different things you can see in the Colonial North America website. And if you don't know what you're looking for, if you just want to browse a little bit, if you go to the main page of Colonial North America at Harvard Library, there are some suggestions. So a lot of different researchers and archivists have done these little mini collections where they'll write an essay and link things from it. So this is an essay about female laborers at Harvard. It's a short essay, and there are all of these links. So if you click on any of the links, it'll bring you directly to the primary source that's a reference to. So this is really great for doing Harvard history or any history in 17th and 18th century America. And that's colonial North America. Okay. So I showed you the Tolman Index and I showed you colonial North America. I want to show you one more online resource that's great for looking at primary sources. So if we go to HOLLIS and HOLLIS databases, there's a resource called America's Historical Newspapers, which will let you search newspapers from the 1690s through the 19th century. All right, so America's Historical Newspapers, great, we view online. And there are different ways to do this. You can search by word, you can browse through publications. So if we click Browse Publications, it'll show us that there are 6,400 32 publications. All right, well, that's a lot. So let's see if we say, let's just look at Boston. So 215 publications. So you can look at all of these newspapers from Boston, from different eras. You can have the publishing dates here. So, you know, this newspaper, the Boston Gazette, was published from 1719 to 1798. You know, if you're looking for Revolutionary War era stuff. In fact, let's do that. Instead of doing browse publications, let's just do a search, and let's look for Crispus Attucks, who was one of the people who was killed in the Boston Massacre. So if we type in Attucks, we can also set the date range or click on the publication name. I'm just going to click on one of these results. And so it's March 12th, 1770. This is the week after the Boston Massacre, which was March 5th, 1770. And we see that this is a news item about the people who were killed in the Boston Massacre, including Crispus Attucks. It highlighted my search term in yellow, but you can also turn that off. This is just showing me the item that I searched for, but you can also see the full page, which is nice for context. So you can see all of the ads, all of the, you know, the headers. This is a really interesting newspaper because it's got this black border signifying mourning in the aftermath of the Boston Massacre. And you can read the whole paper right here on the database. Yeah, so this is the Boston Gazette that we were looking at before, and you can see the header and all of the news. So you can read through all of the 18th century newspapers from Boston, from other colonies. The America's Historical Newspapers database also has a lot of other databases from ReadX that you have access to as a Harvard student through HOLLIS. So there's ReadX All Search, which is really convenient because it'll search all of these things if you're looking for a particular keyword. There are also other collections like Irish historical newspapers. I really like this one, the Flash Press. That's 19th century newspapers. They're sort of like the cheap illustrated newspapers, police newspapers, crime and scandal newspapers. And so those are really interesting to look through. But there's lots of different things. And you can see these databases, even if you're not an early Americanist, there's stuff that you can use in this archive. It's also not just newspapers. There's also this America's Historical Imprints. If you're looking for early American stuff, this is not newspapers, but broadsides and books and other things like that. So if you're looking for a book, you know, when we went to the art museum, we saw that woodcut from The Prodigal Daughter. So if we search for The Prodigal Daughter, we know it's a book that was printed in early America. So we have it here, and you can read the whole thing, the whole Prodigal Daughter. So it's 19 pages, and it'll tell you when there's an illustration on the page, which is really handy if you're looking for illustrations. And so you can look through, you can read the book, you can look at the woodcuts on early American imprints. Okay, so those are a couple of resources that might be helpful to you as you're doing primary source research. So HOLLIS for archival discovery, to look through Harvard's manuscripts and archival holdings. The Tolman Index, which is really good for researching people who were at Harvard. Colonial North America, which is free and not limited to just Harvard students or people with Harvard IDs, that has lots of resources about lots of different topics. And finally, all of those ReadX newspapers, all those early American newspapers that you can search through HOLLIS as a Harvard student. So good luck. Thanks very much.